Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. James Lyons-Weiler coming to you from the studios of WWDNYK. This is Unbreaking Science, and we are going to unbreak some science today. We have a serious problem with misinformation here in these United States of America and, in fact, around the world. I don't know where to begin. When you have to fact check the fact checkers, don't know what that says about them or us or society. Social media doesn't want you to know what they don't want you to know. It's that simple. When you are blocked on social media from talking about something, but the human god by the name of Anthony Fauci has decided that he can talk about it, then they're going to reverse policy on that. It's okay to talk about the origin of the virus all of a sudden, right? So that tells you right there there's a big gaping hole in what's real versus not real. And if you're like me, you like real. And there's never a more real guy that I've ever met in my life than Dr. Henry Ealy. Welcome, my brother.
My brother Jack, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me back. And hopefully it's okay with your audience that I can rock the peace shirt today. I felt like it was very, very important and not be in regular old, official garb and just say, let's make a statement. Let's get into the peace.
You are a peace-loving American, that's for sure.
Amen.
I mean, you got a lot going for you. You're multi-ethnic. I mean, come on, right there. We're making progress, people.
I can say whatever I want in 2021, apparently. This is the first time in my life.
My family's got the BRCA1, so I probably got some Ashkenazi Jew in me somewhere. So we should be good to go. All right. So we're not going to go on those issues. Those are there, but we're all part of the human family. Today,
Amen.
Thank you. Today, our focus is going to be the fact checker, so-called fact checker opinion blog, Health Feedback. Oh yes, our old friends are back. These guys took me around the block for a little walk a little while ago over a topic that they just made a complete mistake over their criticism of something I said. I don't remember what it was. I contacted them. I told them that they were wrong. They changed their website. They never acknowledged that, hey, wait a minute. We made a mistake, so we hereby retract. We apologize to Dr. Jack, whatever. They never did any of that. Instead, what they did was they changed the website quietly, and they never said that they changed it. Now, Health Feedback themselves are in France. They're from France, okay? So they're an amalgam of people who say that their goal is to educate people in science, to provide the public with scientific education. I'm going to go over in fine detail this dumpster fire of a fact check article, and then we're going to get into some stats from VAERS with Dr. Ealy here and kill it. So check this out, folks. We've got PCR tests on vaccinated and unvaccinated people are evaluated using the same criteria. The CDC didn't change criteria for detecting infection in vaccinated people as alleged by Off Guardian article. Now, wait a minute. I've never read Off Guardian. I have no idea who Off Guardian is. So first and foremost, this is not a defense of Off Guardian. Second, this fact check is wrong. Wrong. So here's the deal, folks. We're going to get into the nitty-gritty about whether the CT score was actually changed by the CDC if you have COVID-19 and why. And the first part of this is going to be a discussion between Dr. Ealy and I on the claims made by Health Fact Check or Health Feedback or whatever they call themselves in their opinion blog, allegedly debunking or rebutting somebody else's claim. Now, the first one I want to get to, and I have these all loaded up here. Check it out. It starts like this. As evidence for its claim that the U.S. CDC is, quote, lowering their CT value when testing samples from suspected, quote, breakthrough infections to, quote, decrease the number of, quote, breakthrough infections, quote, from being officially recorded, the article cited this statement on the CDC website. For cases with a known RT-PCR cycle threshold CT value, submit only specimens with CT value less than or equal to 28 to CDC for sequencing. Quote, parentheses, sequencing is not feasible with higher CT values. So let's pause for a moment there, Dr. Ealy. Why is sequencing not feasible for samples that have a CT value greater than 28?
Well, I think it's simple math. Really, Dr. Jack. There's this understanding that when you start getting into above 28 in the cycle threshold, that you're getting so much of the amplification, so much of the reproducibility. And what I give for audiences is this: it's photocopying. You have one photocopy, and then you do one cycle threshold. That's going to create two, and then your second one, you're going to take two, and it's going to make four, and your next one is going to take four and make eight. So every time you go through a cycle threshold, you're doubling what was originally there in the previous cycle. All right, now do I have that correct, Dr. Jack? Because you're
Yeah,
the expert on this.
that's a good layperson
Okay.
explanation of PCR. Sure.
All right. Well, I've been educated very well by you and Dr. Lee. Thank you very
Good.
much. When we see that, and this has been the big problem, is that when anything over 28, especially in a person who is non-symptomatic, the concern, as you've so eloquently stated, is there's at least five, I believe, five entry points for the potential of false positives. So the CDC, in what they're saying, is that we will not accept a sample of a person who's been vaccinated to test for breakthrough if the CT value is above 28. That is precisely a different set of rules than what's going on for people who are being tested in general population, people who are non-vaccinated, where the CT value is set to 40 or higher, depending upon the state and the lab that is doing the evaluation. So there are definitely two different CT values
No
for
doubt.
that.
That's right. So that's clear. Even this article says and quotes the text: less than or greater than 28. The CDC, and we're going to get into those numbers. I have your slides. We're going to get into the
Mhm.
numbers rebutting this in big detail in a minute. But let's check out what they had to say about this. They said this is a grossly inaccurate interpretation of CDC guidance. The guidance applies to samples sent for genomic sequencing, which is a technique used to obtain genetic sequence of the virus. This technique
Mhm.
allows scientists to determine the virus's lineage and identify variants and provide scientists with important information on how the virus is evolving and how mutations change the way the virus behaves. This information in turn helps to guide public health measures and vaccine development. Now, hang on. Here we have a gross gloss over. Oh, it's for sequencing. It's not for
Mhm.
diagnosis, it's for sequencing. And they're going to go
Mhm.
on to say the CDC still records these cases, but let's hold on a moment. That's not the point. The point is if you can't sequence the virus out of a sample that has a CT score greater than 28 cycles,
Mhm.
it's because you get something called push through. That means that if you
Mhm.
sample someone that doesn't have the virus, it will amplify their own DNA. If you sample a pineapple, it will amplify the pineapple's PNA due to inexact amplification because the primers will tend to match somewhere in the genome of the target host, of the host target genome. So, first and foremost, the author of this, she doesn't know anything about PCR. It's really clear. She knows nothing about it. Second, yeah, we know that they're trying to sequence it for new variants. Yeah, we know they're trying to track and that kind of thing. Baloney, they're not trying to track. They say they're trying to track. They actually haven't done any significant contact tracing whatsoever from the beginning when they shipped out their flight test. And vaccine
Mhm.
development, okay, yeah, it'd be nice to know what variants are there. By the way, that means that the vaccine is no longer targeting, the vaccine they want you to get right now is no longer targeting the strains that
Mhm.
are circulating in the United States.
Mhm.
So let's let's get to the next paragraph. As is evident from the statement, the CDC didn't alter the cycle threshold for the PCR test used to identify presence of infection. The statement is relevant to genomic sequencing, which is an additional test used on samples that already tested positive for SARS-CoV-2 by PCR. Hold on. If you can't sequence it and it's not really there, why are those called positive? That's the point.
Exactly. Exactly.
Why are they called positive if you can't even get a viable sequence out of it? You can't get a
If you
viable virus from culture and you can't sequence it. Why are they called right positive? Go on that.
Well, Dr. Jack, I think they told on themselves, right? They told you right there in black and white that anything above a 28 on cycle threshold is a false positive. That the likelihood of false positivity at that level is so great that they won't even collect a lab sample on it because they can't get a sequence. They can't identify that what is apparently testing positive is the SARS-CoV-2 virus. So therefore you can't get a positive confirmation. It's all just genetic gobbledygook at that point above 28 that you've made, right?
Or it's a
So
nothing, or it's a nothing burger at all
or
because it's push
exactly.
through, because it's push through,
It's
right?
the
So,
thing that drives me crazy though, and I wanted to get your thought on this because we were talking about this and it just drove me crazy. Why won't they tell you how many samples have been submitted? If why want like they up until August 30th, they were saying we're going to report all breakthrough, even at this reduced cycle threshold number and everything, but they wouldn't give you how many samples were submitted for
oh, we're going to
testing,
get
so
to
we
that.
could
We're
even
going to
get
get to
that.
that.
Oh, okay, okay, I'm
We
ahead
got
then.
slides on that. We got slides on
All
that. So
right,
we're going to get to that. Let's finish with this. All right. So
okay.
not sequencing a sample doesn't change the fact that someone tested positive for COVID-19 by PCR. We don't care. Somebody tested positive for COVID-19 by PCR does not mean that they're infectious, even if the virus is there, and it does not mean that they're infected because of push through. So if you go all the way up to 30, 35, 40, and all the rest, we're looking at a real problem here. So there's a mixed bag of reasons why the PCR might be positive, but you can't sequence it. So they're just glossing over those details, folks. This so-called fact-checked health what is it called? Health feedback, a blog opinion article, non-peer reviewed, I must say. Okay, so therefore, this CDC guidance has no influence on the number of COVID-19 cases recorded, as the article claims. Yes, it does, because it leads to an overestimation of the number of samples that are recorded, and that's our problem. Our problem is, this person's opinion apparently is, go ahead and record any case that tests positive by PCR. It's just fine with the world. It's just fine with everything. Guys, if you guys go to Twitter and go to hashtag cost of the false positives, I have been cataloging all of the cost to society as a result of the false positives on
Wow.
CDCs. So there's a huge list of articles out there, huge list. Okay, so check this out. Cases from vaccinated people are still being recorded, even if asymptomatic or mild. Okay. The article claims that the asymptomatic or mild infections will no longer be recorded by COVID-19 cases, citing CDC again. This is CDC. As of May 1st, 2021, CDC transitioned from monitoring all reported vaccine breakthrough cases to focus on identifying and investigating only hospitalized or fatal cases due to any cause. This shift will help maximize the quality of the data collected on cases of greatest clinical and public health importance. Previous case counts, which were last updated on April 26, 2021, are available for reference only and will not be updated moving forward. In other words, they're case counts based on, if you're asymptomatic and you were mildly symptomatic, or if you had a CT of greater than 28 and you were vaccinated, we counted them up until April 26. Those data, they're no longer data. They just erased them. They just said they're only there for reference only. So how can this article claim, hey, we're nothing to see here, folks. This is a bunch of gobbledygook. This is a bunch of baloney. They're lying. It's straightforward. Let's go on. There's more here than you can imagine. All right. So an Associated Press fact check explained that this is inaccurate. COVID-19. What are they saying is not accurate? I just might have skipped one. All right, so that's right to there. COVID-19 is a reportable condition, meaning that by law, every positive test must be reported. The National Notifiable Diseases Surveillance System requires testing sites and medical facilities to report positive tests to the local health department. They then pass the information to the state health department, which notifies the CDC. Now, that's all fine and good up until April 26, because, as we will see, there is no mechanism by which a state can report a case that has a CT score greater than 28 to the CDC. You'll see what they're doing here. It's a shell and pea game. Now, the site Kristen Nordland, a health communications specialist at the CDC, clarified that vaccine breakthrough cases will still be recorded, saying CDC is not going to stop reporting cases of COVID-19 in any fashion. What does this mean? Then going forward, the CDC won't publish cases of mild and asymptomatic COVID-19 breakthrough on the basis of their website. Wait a minute. How does the public get the CDC information? From their website.
Right. Right.
So they count them, but they don't count them. Again, it doesn't match up. Then they go to the AP fact check that they're citing, where AP says CDC did not stop reporting COVID-19 cases among people who were not vaccinated. Okay, and this is the important part here. The AP fact check quoted, however, mild and asymptomatic COVID-19 breakthrough cases, which occur after someone has been fully vaccinated, will no longer be published separately on the CDC's website. According to the CDC, special surveillance of breakthrough cases was initially set up to identify patterns among individuals who were vaccinated and still got COVID-19. Since an analysis of those cases has not shown any unexpected patterns, the CDC has changed their approach to surveillance. Can we just go home now?
Yes. What? So you know what's interesting about that, Dr. Jack? Can you bring that up one more time?
Yeah.
That quote. They said, since an analysis of those cases has not shown any unexpected patterns. Okay, so first of all, what were you expecting to see? Because the last time I checked, this was a completely new technology, so it's completely unpredictable. You may have some loose ideas and hopes and dreams, but it's still, you have to collect data so that you can do accurate forecasting. It would make sense to me that we collect at least a year's worth of data, but how about we collect all the data until the clinical trials are done and then evaluate that data based upon the empirical evidence that it provides, right? How about we approach it like that? This is driving me crazy.
Wait. You're just being too rational. Hang on. You're just being too rational. There's a bombshell in here that everybody's missing. Now watch this. Everybody's missing this bombshell. Okay. Nordland told AP that CDC and state health departments will be focusing only on investigating vaccine breakthrough cases. Okay. All right. So the website also explains that CDC is recording vaccine breakthrough cases in a separate database for the time being. All right. So before we get to the database issue, right, this is what I mean. They're playing a shell game. They're saying, sure, it's no problem. We can go ahead. The states report it this way. And then they failed to say that the receptacle that exists to which the states are going to report will not accept any information about asymptomatic vaccinated cases. It doesn't exist, right? Mm-hmm. So this is passive-aggressive non-reporting, okay? Mm-hmm. Now, why is this so important? All right, now check this out. CDC developed a national COVID-19 vaccine breakthrough red cap database where designated state health department investigators designated can enter, store, and manage data for cases in their jurisdiction. State health departments have full access to data for cases reported from the jurisdiction. Ultimately, someday CDC will use the National Notifiable Diseases Surveillance System to identify vaccine breakthrough cases. Once CDC has confirmed that a state can report vaccination history data to NNDSS, CDC will identify vaccine breakthrough cases through that system. What's happening now? Where did the data go? Where's the vaccine breakthrough cases data today? And how long is it going to be?
Exactly.
What they're going to do is they're going to scrap NNDSS. Well, mark my words. They're going to come up with another system, another set of criteria. They don't know what to do. Right? Now, what happens if CDC says breakthrough cases include variants that the PCR detected? Breakthrough cases include variants that the PCR can't detect. What does that reveal? And this is the bombshell. This system won't detect variants that have escaped the PCR test. Mm-hmm. Not just false positives. The PCR test was escaped by the UK variant because some person, some scientist, somebody put one of the primers on the spike protein. And there were 17 mutations on the spike protein. And so you had to have 2 out of 3 of the primer sites lit up in Europe to say this is a COVID-19 case, right? So you drop out one primer out of 6 because they're pairs. The test is going to fail half the time on that variant. Half the
Hmm.
time. That's the math. The UK variant spread because of PCR failure. The UK variant spread. There were false negatives in the UK, France, Germany, Europe, every place that it spread because they were using a PCR test that wasn't working for 8 months and they didn't know it
Hmm.
wasn't working.
Hmm.
That's why this is so important. The CDC has to capture and sequence even the ones where the CT threshold doesn't go up to 28, it doesn't go beyond 28, because if they don't sequence them, they're going to miss variants that escape the test. That's the bombshell in this, and nobody
Yeah.
sees it.
Yeah. It's a huge bombshell, and it's like if somebody wasn't understanding where you're coming from a place of searching for the truth. If somebody wasn't understanding that, they'd be like, well, Dr. Jack, are you saying that that the test wasn't designed to detect the potential variants? And you're like, yeah, it wasn't designed for that, so that these variants can escape the PCR. So that's a problem right there, because the whole reason of getting the test is supposed to be to help reduce, control, maintain, corral the infective spread. But if your test isn't designed to check for the variants, you can't do that. And am I understanding what you're saying right now?
Correct. That's correct. So
Okay.
the test, if right, we know the UK. This is not controversial. I'm not making it up. This was said by Andrew Rambo, the UK premier evolutionary virologist. And when I wrote to him, and I said, "Why are you saying it's a good thing that the PCR that the UK variant escaped the test? Because now we can know the difference when you're ignoring the 8 months that it was spreading without the test
Hmm.
detecting it." And
Hmm.
he said to me, "Well, haven't you think that we've thought about that?" Yeah, you might have thought about it, Andrew, but you're not saying it. This
Hmm.
is a premier virologist who won't dare come out and say that PCR is a flawed approach towards the diagnosis of COVID-19 for obvious reasons, because it's the mainstream thought. Now, check this out. Now, keep in mind about the false negatives that can occur where somebody walks in, they get tested, go home, no problem. You're going to spread COVID to your family, whatever, right? Now, check this claim out. That now, going back to the AP article. All right, we're going to go back to the AP article here. This is the one that the Health Fact Check cited. The move was lauded by infectious disease specialists. It has become clear when you have a breakthrough infection in a fully vaccinated individual that those are clinically insignificant and inconsequential and not even associated with contagiousness. How
What?
many breakthrough infections have led to deaths, Dr. Ealy?
Well, from what the CDC is reporting, the last time I looked at it, let me go to their breakthrough case, their page right here. They're reporting 439 deaths, breakthrough deaths,
That's now
and there's
let's read that again. 439 clinically insignificant and inconsequential,
mhm.
right? So these 439 people are clinically insignificant and inconsequential according to this paradigm. They don't matter, and the people that they infected don't matter. That's a problem.
Excuse me. Did I say 489? I should have said 439.
Yeah,
I
you said
maybe
439. Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make
Okay.
sure I said that. So here's there's a little caveat here on this page, Dr. Jack. They say 71 or 16% of the 439 fatal cases reported as asymptomatic or not related to COVID-19. So what's interesting is last summer and last year, asymptomatic was the big thing, even though it was never definitively proven, and the Wuhan study completely disproves it, right? So they were throwing asymptomatic out there left and
That's
right to
right.
say, hey, that's sign that it's COVID. You could be asymptomatic and spread that. Now they're saying asymptomatic is not significant and we're not going to count it.
Well, let's,
So it's like, so which is it?
well, let's look at their numbers. You just said it was 439. This article says that there was 9,245 breakthrough cases reported as of April 26th. So
Well,
we
I
can
can give you an
calculate the
even.
percentage. It's 4.74% of people who have a breakthrough case are going to die.
Yep.
That's not
So
clinically insignificant people.
significant. No,
Okay.
it's not. It's
Okay.
not.
Okay. So why are they going to die? Because they're not tested. They're sent home. You don't have COVID. So they don't even take it upon themselves to research treatment. It's bad enough that we have the Fauci paradigm that says if you get COVID by given a COVID-19 diagnosis and you're sent home for 10 days to see if you need to go to the emergency room. That's their idea of medical care. These people are told, don't worry about that cough. It's not COVID. Don't worry that your lungs are filling up. It's not COVID. You tested negative. They don't even look up on the internet and Google for vitamin D3, hydroxychloroquine, they don't ivermectin. They don't even bother because they think they're negative, and then they go visit grandma. So this is what they are doing to protect their testing paradigm. Is they're saying that 4.7% death rate is clinically insignificant. The CDC, infectious disease, public health has lost their flippin' minds.
Hmm.
Okay.
Agreed, 100%. See, to me, I start looking at this and going, when things get complicated, they're usually somebody's trying to hide something. That's usually what I find in the study of science and in public health policy. When it gets too complex, somebody's trying to hide something. They're trying to create a lot of chaos and things like that to throw people off the scent. Now, the CDC has an obligation under the Information Quality Act to produce data that is verifiable, that is accurate, and so forth. They have the federal legal obligation to do this. They don't get to decide what data they publish on this and what data they don't publish, what data they keep in a private database and whatnot, which makes me question a lot of what's going on. And some of the questions that have come up are quite frankly, okay, right now, roughly 10,000 people have, as of April 30th, 10,000 people had reported breakthrough. My first question, Dr. Jack, was how many samples was that out of? Was that 10,000 out of 12,000 samples that were submitted? Because if so, that starts telling us that this vaccine breakthrough, which is really should be termed vaccine failure, right? That's, I think, the
That's
more
right.
correct technical term is vaccine failure. The vaccine didn't work.
That's
If
exactly right.
if 80% of your samples showed vaccine failure, then that's telling you that that's a nail in the coffin for this experimental product that we know is injuring and
Right.
has been
So
involved with deaths.
we're about to get to that because now
Oh,
this
great.
in
I
this
can't
health.
wait to get to it
No, it's
clearly.
great. It's a great point. The health fact check article then does this really contorted mental distortion that's really fun to watch. Okay, so it's like a roller coaster ride. You ready? Now check
I
this
am.
out. All
I
right.
got my belt on. Okay, let's go.
So they
Going up.
go, COVID-19 vaccines are highly effective at preventing severe COVID-19 and death. They aren't experimental gene therapy. Apparently, that article mentioned experimental gene therapy. That's beside the point. The point here is the article claimed that CDC was moving the goalposts for PCR testing in order to make it seem as if the experimental gene therapy vaccines are effective at preventing COVID-19. Now, this is where it gets cool. This claim is inaccurate and poorly reasoned. Firstly, scientists already had a pool of evidence demonstrating that the COVID-19 vaccine was are effective at preventing disease, predating the alleged change in the PCR cycle thresholds. So they already had efficacy data from their trials. So this person believes that post-market surveillance studies are beside the point. We already did
Right.
our short-term randomized clinical trials, so we're going to ignore any data after that. But yet we're told that that's called pharmacovigilance. We're told that that's where we get the best information is the long-term trials because
Uh-huh.
they're larger numbers, they're more powered. Okay, we're told that this is that vaccines are tested more rigorously because they undergo pharmacovigilance.
Hmm.
Okay, if they're so effective, then why are you afraid to show vaccine failure?
Exactly.
Exactly. Right?
Exactly. One
So
of my
let's just
first
stop
questions.
science. Let's just stop doing
Right.
science. We did 2 or 3 randomized clinical trials. Okay, we're good. We're never going to learn anything more about this. And the author of this article doesn't understand science moves on. It goes
Right.
on day after day after day after day. We learn new things. And then we interpret the old data in light of new data. This is
Hmm.
new data that conflates with the old data. It deserves and requires an explanation.
Well, I love the thing I love about science is that and scientists, we reserve the right to change our professional opinion in the presence of new information. But we need to have that new information to be able to formulate that opinion or to substantiate that the original thought was correct. We need that information. So when you're restricting access to that information, you are in violation of the basic tenets of science, which
That's
is the
right.
open pursuit of truth.
That's right.
Now, when I first got started into studying and researching vaccines as most people do is because my son was about to be born. And so I wanted to know, is this right for us or not? So I started to plunge in. And one of my first questions I had, Dr. Jack, was really simple. Of the people that had gotten the Hep B vaccine, how many of them still contracted the disease? And this is
Right.
the tenet of surveillance reporting. We want to know how many people that endeavored into this preventative therapeutic intervention, whatever you want to call it these days. It's so muddied, the water. Is it a preventative or is it therapy? I don't know anymore, right?
Right.
So, how many people got this shot actually still got contracted Hep B? That's a reasonable question for us all to know.
That's right.
This is what they're trying, and they're terming this vaccine breakthrough. I'm going to term it vaccine failure because that's really technically what it is. The vaccine didn't work. I want to know what percentage of people did that. If you don't give me access to that information for something that is brand new, that has went through basically the fastest developmental process ever, 7 months.
That's right.
If you aren't, and that is still in clinical trial until now, it's May 2nd for the Pfizer one, May 2nd, 2023. If you don't give me access to that data, then you are not being transparent. And in order for us to have trust in our public health
Mhm.
agencies, our government officials, what they are saying, I cannot trust someone that's saying, believe me because I said so,
That's
or
right.
trust me, I'll give you this information later after the fact. People need that information right now so that they can make an informed decision. It is the key component of informed consent. Having access to this. I want to know how many people got this, still contracted the virus. How many people got this, contracted the virus, and had to be hospitalized?
And it's
How many
ongoing.
people?
And it's
And
ongoing. So the
right,
percentages matter. Let's take a look at what she claimed the
keep going.
efficacy was. All right, brother?
Yeah, go,
Okay.
go, go.
All right. So look at this. This evidence comes from clinical trials. She's talking about the efficacy examined of the COVID-19 vaccines authorized by U.S. Food and Drug Administration. Never authorized. They were never approved. They were just given emergency use authorization. These are emergency measures, which demonstrated the vaccines are highly effective at preventing severe COVID-19. Wait a minute. She just changed the goalpost. We're talking about infection. We're talking about preventing COVID-19, not preventing severe COVID-19. Now keep that in mind. We're talking about vaccine failure where the person still gets the infection versus preventing severe COVID-19, and she blithely cites, as if she didn't just say severe COVID-19. In November 2020, Pfizer and BioNTech reported that their vaccine had 95% efficacy at preventing symptomatic COVID-19, while Moderna reported 94% efficacy. Now, I took that apart in an article where I showed that they excluded the people who got COVID-19 after the first shot. They didn't give them the second shot. They didn't give them the second placebo. When you do the math, COVID-19 vaccine from Moderna, 75% efficacy. 75% efficacy. So what does that mean? That you have to include, okay, let's break it down. If I have a new chemotherapy drug and I have a regime that has 3 doses, I can show that my chemotherapy drug is 100% effective at curing cancer, right? Of treating cancer. If I leave out the people who died after the first dose and I leave out the people who died after the second dose. That's the same thing as here. They gave the people the first dose. They got diagnosis of COVID. Okay, we're going to kick you out of the trial. No, baloney.
Mm-hmm.
The FDA missed this. The FDA completely missed this or
Mm-hmm.
didn't care, one of the two. So, first of all, her claim is false that the vaccines were shown to be highly efficacious. All right? And they're calling themselves a fact check organization. And PCR itself is not a legitimate test for any viral infection, because, in part because the virus is evolving. But it's no substitution, right? If you're just going to screen the population, we've been over this. If you have a high viral load, you have a low CT value, fine, you're probably infectious. If you have,
Sure.
right, a low viral load, you're going to have a very high CT value, probably not infectious. You have to have high viremia to be infectious. But what if you're all the way out to 45? It's like the limit of the test. You're just saying, okay, everybody that we tested. So this ridiculousness that they're calling science has to come to an end. And you and I are part of a sequencing consortium that will be replacing, sequencing itself will be replacing PCR testing. in the United States. The way that we do that is with data, and we need to do the research. So when we see these kinds of fact checking things, and then we look at people's work, like your work, Dr. Ealy, where you actually you actually look at the statistics. Let's bring up what you have here. Now check how I did this out. I think you're going to like this.
All right.
Where are we? I just want to overlay this here. Come back. Little nuanced touch here. Okay, here we go. There we are. This is what you sent me. So deaths within 0 to 2 days of injection. VAERS data, 2,228. This is up 439 from the previous week. Now these data are what, a week old?
This was data that was published on the 21st of May for data collected through, from what they said, May 14th. Yes.
Okay, so just over a week old, right? So there's now we're at what, 4,000 something?
No, what's really shocking is that number has gone down this week. So yeah, yeah, you said it right. So this was at the previous week of reporting, because I've been doing this every week. I follow this data intently every single week. It was at 2,028. There were 2,028 fatalities within 2 days. Now, why did we say 2 days? Because we're saying, look, if somebody died within 2 days, that sure looks like causality to me. You know, it's either causality or it's medical malpractice. Either it's causality that the vaccine is that one new variable in and it led to the death, or it's malpractice. That person shouldn't have been qualified to receive the experimental COVID vaccine, injection, biologic, whatever you want to call it, in the first place. There's something wrong there when a therapy is initiated and 2,000 people die from it or in connection with it within 48 hours. We can all agree on that, right? So when we see that number, the eyes bug out, because there has never been a product available for Americans to utilize, whether it's medical or whatever, that has a track record like this. Not even previous vaccines. It's never happened before. But everybody's saying, well, you have to expect a certain number of deaths. No, you don't. Medicine is the exploration of first, do no harm. So if we're doing harm, we have to take a step back and reevaluate the efficacy of what we are doing, the safety of what we are doing. But in this situation, it seems to be full speed ahead, where some people are just going to die. We cared about them last year, but now we don't care about them this year. It just doesn't make any sense. So we looked at the data this week, Dr. Jack, and the data this week is showing something very concerning, and something that we have had some people warning us about, that the CDC is starting to scrub records. This week, the number of people reportedly dying by virus is 1,707. This is a reduction. Is
this within the 0 to 2 days of injection again?
Exactly. Same parameters, the exact same parameters. So these numbers shouldn't go down. At the best, they should just stay static, right? 2038 minus 1707. So we have a reduction of 331 deaths within it. So they've taken 331 deaths and removed them from virus, even though these people were injected, even though these people did die within 2 days, within 48 hours of receiving that injection. And that's just unconscionable to start cleaning data while data is being collected. It's a violation of the Information Quality Act. It's a violation of the Paperwork Reduction Act. It's a violation of the American Administrative Procedures Act. It's a violation of federal law to do what they are doing right now, and then to say we are going to take potential breakthrough samples, set lower limits on them, cycle threshold at 28, and now a person has to be either hospitalized or die for us to evaluate it, and then we're not going to give you the number of samples that we collected so that you could come up with some reasonable estimate of what percentage of samples are showing breakthrough that you could then extrapolate to the entire population. That's what science is. Science says, give me the data, I'll analyze it, and I'll decide and think for myself. But I really wanted to get your feedback on this. I was reading a paper last night, Dr. Jack, on absolute risk reduction versus relative risk reduction. And the author in the Lancet took them to task for, the relative risk reduction analysis that all of these manufacturers did in their clinical trials, in their preliminary stages of their clinical trials, and he was arguing that it should be absolute risk reduction. And I've been very curious. What do you think about that? I know you've seen it. What do you think about that?
It's so elementary to calculate both absolute risk reduction and relative risk reduction that both should be reported. It's
Hmm.
absolutely important especially when it comes down to actual populations. So I
Hmm.
once created a piece of software with my co-author Haiwen Shi, that's a clinical decision modeling system. And rather than just go on percentages, we're abstract. We made what this software does is it calculates the accuracy of a proposed diagnostic workflow on the basis of combining different biomarkers and different diagnostic technologies. And rather than just do percentage and sensitivity specificity, we left it at the number of bodies. How many bodies fall into this category? How many bodies fall into that category? Because to the accountants that are running big medicine, they need to know, should we adopt this technology, or if we're only going to ever diagnose zero point 0.6 of a patient? What if we're only going to
Hmm.
diagnose one patient per 5 years? Why would we,
Right.
So it's
Right.
really important that we think in terms of real people. And it's easy to get lost in the percentages. But we know that these vaccines are under emergency use authorization and the clinical trials are ongoing. Your next point is exactly that. So let's take a look at the dates. You may have updates to this, but go ahead
I
on
do.
when the clinical trials are going to end.
Okay, so first and foremost, the Pfizer BioNTech trial has now been extended from April 6th to May 2nd of 2023. That just happened in the last week. Moderna is still set to end on October 27th, 2022, and Johnson & Johnson is still scheduled to end on January 2nd, 2023. We're not close to being through these clinical trials. We're not close. And the longitudinal data we have to have, especially when you see that Pfizer leaked report about the affinity that I think it was the mRNA lipid pocket has for ovarian tissue in particular. This is what Dr. Michael Yeadon has been warning the world of for over a year, that there is enormous concerns long term about infertility, about autoimmune conditions, and so forth with people doing this. People, this is an experimental product by definition. The clinical trials are ongoing. You are giving
They're,
access to them
they're,
because
they're,
it's an
they're,
emergency.
they're trying to determine the safety and efficacy of these vaccines in these clinical
Right.
trials. So, what if I had a drug and I was doing a long term clinical trial?
Mm.
And I don't know, a few months into the clinical trial, I decided that the people who the drug didn't work on, but who got sick anyway, I'm not going to count them because I don't have a database ready to count them. And it's a new drug and it's not FDA approved. And, I'm going to argue that I'm not changing my criteria, but we're going to change the mechanism of diagnosis of what we're trying to measure in the middle of a clinical trial that's going to last until October 2022 or April 2023. What what I would label that as, I think you would agree, is scientific fraud. That
It's
is
fraud.
absolutely dead stop scientific fraud to change your outcome measure in the middle of a trial, at the beginning of a trial. This is not good for this is not going to bode well for the vaccinologists in the long term. Let's go to the next thing.
Well, Dr. Jack, can I ask a question on that?
You
Because
bet.
you have much more experience on this. Wouldn't it seems to me like the proper procedure would be that if you're going to make a change to something that once your clinical trial is approved, you have to do it verbatim. If you're going to make any changes to the clinical trial and how you're doing things, you have to then stop your clinical trial, put it on pause, and go back through the approval process to make sure that that change is approved to be done, and then whether or not you have to go back in previous staging to restart everything over. Am I correct in that
You may
assumption?
not have to stop it. It depends on what you're treating. So if it's a drug for acne, yeah, you have to stop
Mhm.
it. But if it's a
Mhm.
chemotherapy that's going to save people's lives or not, right?
Mhm.
And you're looking at it from the perspective of, okay, we're going to change the way we're going to count it if somebody's died from chemo, right?
Mhm.
You may have to stop. Either way, you have to get a letter from the IRB that says we approve of this
Mhm.
change. The
Mhm.
CDC is changing their outcome criterion in the middle of a trial, right in front of our
Mhm.
eyes. Okay.
Mhm.
right in front of our eyes. So it's absolute scientific fraud. So let's talk about the emergency use authorization requirement to report here. Go for it.
Mhm. Well, one of the things that people keep reporting is that the Pilgrim Harvard study that shows that less than 1% of all adverse events get reported for all previous vaccines, I think is very accurate. When you look at the curricula around the country in medical schools, there are no classes on specifically on vaccines. There's no education around it, let alone education on how to identify what a vaccine injury looks like based upon post marketing data, which all of these vaccines are required to publish. So what they did was they turned the vaccine adverse events reporting system into a pseudo surveillance tool by requiring under EUA all of the EUA approved experimental COVID biologics, any adverse events have to be reported. But then they muddied the waters. And they muddied the waters in a couple of ways. Number one, they did not explicitly state to every person administering what to look for in terms of adverse events,
Sure.
and make it very clear to them that you have to report. They left it up to be subjective for a person who is administering the experimental biologic for them to determine whether or not they feel like this is an adverse event. That's wrong. Okay. Then the second thing that they did was they said, we're going to put out a campaign. We're going to take some of this taxpayer money. We're going to put out a campaign that teaches people that a adverse event is actually a sign that the biologic is working. That's BS.
Yeah.
That's scientific fraud right there. You don't develop a clot in your arterial system because it's a sign that it's working. If that's the vaccine working, then it's working to kill you. And then we have to wonder why it's even there. So that was the second thing. And then what you created with that environment is you created people who already don't necessarily want to contact their physician afterwards. So you read these various reports, and how many times do you see the same thing? I decided to stay home and watch and wait. Something wasn't feeling right. I decided to stay home, watch and wait. I contacted the administrating person. They said to stay home and watch and wait. Everybody's doing this. They're crossing their fingers and hoping that a person recovers. Not once did they pre-screen a person to make sure that they had no prior infection to SARS-CoV-2 and didn't have circulating antibodies. At no point in time did they do a pre-screen to check for vitamin D status to make sure they're above 55 nanograms per milliliter. At no time did they say, hey, we're going to treat this like the artificial infection it is, and we're going to encourage you to take nutrients after to make sure we minimize adverse events and the likelihood. At no point in time did they ever do this, but instead what they did was they doubled down and said, we've never tested pregnant women in any of these studies. We're going to approve it for pregnant women.
We never really
test teens or kids
or people with autoimmunological conditions.
Thank you. And none of it. But
so now we see these. Now we see these deaths, Dr. Ealy. And another point that you're bringing to me is that most FDA-approved pharmaceuticals receive a black box warning after 5 deaths. 5 deaths. And let's go back to the numbers that you said were present in the database before they started manipulating them.
Right. So as of last week, as of data published through 5/21, 4,477 deaths in connection with, and I'm going to keep saying it like that because I agree with anybody who says correlation doesn't equal causation, right? We agree, right?
Yeah, but you know about Jessica Rose's analysis, and she found statistically that the deaths are actually clustered. They're not even across all the days, and that is a vote in favor of causality. But nevertheless, the point here is 5. 5 deaths gives you an FDA black box warning. 5. Do we have more than 5? That's the point.
We're definitely way past 5. And then when you look at it globally, it's over 20,000 at the very least. So what you have to start thinking is, why doesn't this have a black box warning? And how in the world could you even consider giving an employer the authority to mandate something with a black box warning that's still in clinical trial on their employees or a school on their students? Give me a break.
Okay, so check it out, folks. So this is Dr. Ealy's information here. We're going over some of the stuff we already talked about, so I'm going to skip some slides. But we have 9,245 reported positive COVID-19 cases after vaccination nationwide. Vaccine failure, but as of May 1, they're no longer reporting the positive cases in a place that's accessible to the public on their website, according to AP News. Okay. unless the person is deceased or hospitalized and the PCR has a cycle threshold of 28 or lower. We talked about that. This is a thorough analysis, 46 out of 56 states and territories reporting. I love how you're so inclusive, my brother. You're just so good to keep
Mm-hmm.
those territories there. The PCR cycle threshold, 28 or lower, if you're vaccinated. If you're not vaccinated, go ahead. We're going to analyze it. We're going to report it, 40 or higher. 40
Mm-hmm.
cycles or higher.
Mm-hmm.
And your point here, the drive home point for you, is that the number of samples tested is unknown. We need those data. We need to put a demand on them. The Senate should put a demand on them to publish the number of samples that are tested, so we know the rates of what we're talking about really is rates
Yep.
and the
Can I
deaths.
make one point? Can I make one
Yep,
point on that earlier one, Dr. Jack?
yep.
So, you said territories. Do you know why I put that in there? Because last year, when my team started doing all of our data work on COVID and tracking everything, we made sure to include the territories, and we thought it was just a nice thing to do for the people living there and saying, "Hey, I don't care whether they designate you a state or not. In our opinion, you're Americans. Puerto Rico, we love you, right?" Guess what we found out? That's where they were hiding cases. Just like they were hiding fatalities in New York State, there's a huge variance between New York State, what New York State reports as total number of deaths, and what the CDC reports for New York State. They were hiding tens of thousands of cases in Puerto Rico that we could not substantiate were actually had ever been tested. They're basically taking a dry eraser and erasing the number and writing whatever number they wanted. And so that's where it became very important. So what's crazy about this is we don't know, out of the 46 out of 56 states that were and territories that were submitting, we don't know which ones were and which ones weren't. We don't know the 10 that weren't. We don't know if one of those 10 is California. We don't know if one of those 10 is Texas.
Got
We
it.
don't know. So there's no way to it's
And
just
that and
impossible.
that's very important because there may in fact be a difference in the vaccine efficacy, vaccine uptake,
Hmm.
testing, all the sources of variance in the American population, which includes the people in the states and the territories. And I love you for that. That's so important to include everybody. You're all inclusive every day of your life. I've never
Amen.
met anybody as inclusive as you, actually. You're just awesome. So, additional COVID vaccine reported deaths. We talked about that. Now we've got low risk ages. How many deaths in 0 to 39?
Well, the 0 to 39 as of last week was 122, but we just got at least 16 reports in Veris of people under 20 who have either been seriously injured or died due to in connection with the experimental biologics. The high risk ages go up still. Give me 1 second. Let me just update this for everybody. It take me 1 second to do this. I
Well,
have
while you're
Veris
looking it
open.
up, while you're going to look it up, and I want to put this into context. So,
Mhm.
ages 0 to 39. Notice how they report the data in this huge lump from
Yep.
0 to 39. Not 0 to 10, not 0 to 5, not 10 to 15, 0 to 39. If they went from 0 to 20, how many kids died? How many kids have to die for a vaccine that has no utility to them, no benefit to them?
Here, now
For what?
let me be fair on that one. That may be my team aggregating right there. So from the 0 to 39, just
Well,
because
you
we
tell us.
felt like
Okay, you tell us, because
so yeah. So
in my experience, I've seen CDC aggregate the data in a way that you can't
me
tell
too.
who's. Yeah, okay.
I've seen that as well. This one I think is on us. We aggregated this for this simple fact that we wanted to do a comparative analysis between the people that were deemed
High
significantly
risk.
low
Yeah,
risk
okay. Okay.
versus high risk. So right now, what we're seeing deaths in the low risk, we're seeing one. Let's see, that's going to be 948. One. So we're seeing 126 now, 136. Let's see, 40, 18. Yeah, 126 in the 0 to 39 age range. So it's gone up by about four more people died. What's crazy about that is that we're seeing deaths, Dr. Jack. Like we have two reports in the 1 to 2 year age range and one in the 0 and under 6 months. But what isn't counted in here are the 250 257, let me see here, 247 spontaneous abortions, fetal deaths, or premature labors that have occurred. And that's only through 5/7.
Well, just so we make it through the censors, let's say that those two very young deaths, right, because the vaccines are not being administered at those very young ages,
They better not be.
are either a vaccine error, a vaccine administration error, which actually occurs, vaccine administration error, baby got the wrong vaccine, or there's somebody entering data, it's some kind of a typo, yada, yada, yada. So let's put that caveat on there, because so far everything that we've said is not speculative and backed by data. So the two data points that you're talking about that are very young, let's shift our focus to the spontaneous abortions that you're talking about. There's a high rate of spontaneous abortions. These terminated pregnancies that would have gone to full term. And where's the clinical trial on the pregnant women?
It's non-existent. It doesn't exist, and so
they can't be ruled out. In other words,
right?
Because there's been no randomized clinical trial on pregnant women, they can't rule out that these spontaneous abortions were caused by the vaccine. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, so there we have it. All right, so that's how you think about this, folks. Unless you have science and data, you can't rule anything out. All right, so here we go. Stroke, heart attack, paralysis, the numbers are there. I'm not going to make you defend them to the data point or update them. These are adverse events that are allegedly, according to Dr. Shimabukuro, who gave a presentation at the ACIP meeting. There are no adverse events that are associated with the COVID-19 vaccination program.
You know what's interesting about that guy? That's the same guy that was the subject matter expert for the Council of State and Territorial Epidemiologists position paper that the CDC adopted. That guy keeps showing up.
That's the same guy that had the data on vaccine-induced elective abortion on the CD in his bag and showed it to the activists who were at the meeting, not for COVID-19, but for pediatric vaccines in general, Tdap, for Tdap. And his data actually supported a 5,700% increase in spontaneous abortions due to Tdap. And yet those data were never published. Those data were never mentioned to ACIP. He dare not present them, but he gave them to, I think it was Eileen D. I'm just going to say Eileen D. Okay, so yeah, this guy keeps showing up. How did he get to zero when Jessica Rose could publish in Science Public Health Policy and the Law 4,000 when you have these stroke, heart attack, paralysis, when everybody knows somebody who's been vaccinated who's hurt by the vaccine? How can this Shimabukuro guy come up with a big fat goose egg of nothing's wrong with this vaccine? There are absolutely zero. And then more importantly, how could ACIP, who's charged with making decisions that on the basis of the safety of vaccines, buy that package of bullshit and not say, wait a minute, what about Bell's palsy? We already have that in the Lancet. Dr. Shimabukuro, how in the world can you say there's none? Right? So ACIP is complicit in bearing this. He's complicit in bearing this. There are adverse events that have followed this. They are claimed to be not causally linked because the medical doctors ruled those out in the clinical trials. They can't have it both ways. The whole point of long-term surveillance is to say, if you have a heart attack in the long-term surveillance, maybe we missed it in the short-term randomized clinical trial. So this is the nature of vaccine safety science in your country right now, and that's why I, Dr. James Lyons-Weiler, challenge you to join me in supporting Plan B, hashtag Plan B, to shut down the CDC, shut them down, and set up another institution. Look for my name on Twitter and hashtag Plan B, and read the paper. Look what I have planned for you for an active, real, healthy, proactive public health that doesn't get in your face. They ask questions like, what I want is a public health institution that says, what's killing people in the United States? What's making people in the United States sick? And I'll tell you right now, before COVID-19 came, medical error was the number 3 cause of death. And if you count the failure to treat COVID-19, COVID-19 allopathy is the number 1 cause of death in the United States. That's what this organization that I want to see take place and be formed would actually show. So we're looking at the data. Thank you, Dr. Ealy. Let's go back to the original exercise here because I have more to say about this right here.
I would throw one thing on there too as cause of death:
Yeah,
Ig- ignorance and nutrient deficiency.
absolutely.
Most people don't know something as simple as where their liver is, let alone what it does. So most people are grossly undereducated on how to care for this amazing gift of a body that we've been given and this gift of life we've been given. And it's incredible to me that an organization like the CDC can know that Americans are so dramatically deficient in key immunological nutrients like vitamin D, vitamin C, vitamin A, vitamin E, and zinc, and know this for 20 years, have a ridiculous amounts of funding to do something about it, and to do nothing.
Nothing. They've done nothing. Like this fact check health feedback website here. This is, I'm going to show you the author, Flora T.O. This is the same person that wrote um, the snot rag, I guess, of an article that we're reviewing. Okay, this is a ridiculously bad piece. I'm going to label it false. In fact, I'm going
Bam.
to label this health feedback false and false, and I'm going to do it again, false. And guess what? I think it's. Let's do that again because it was fun. It was false, 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 false. All right, so listen. Um, Dr. Ealy, the
Yep.
big question that everybody's who's watching this is going to want to know: what can they do about this travesty? What are the adverse events that are happening that are being denied? Not the adverse events. It's not their responsibility to take care of the adverse events. What can they do about the denial of adverse events from vaccines, the mismanagement of data, the falsification of data, the fraud that's happening right now in front of our eyes in the COVID-19 long-term surveillance studies? What can people do?
Well, you know what? I think, Dr. Jack, there's a lot that people can do. And I think this is the first, this is why I like all the conversations we're having. Right off the bat, you get to decide what you believe in. You don't have to believe in the narrative. You can go and get yourself educated. And if you're watching this show, you are already getting yourself educated. Investigate vitamin D, investigate vitamin C, investigate ivermectin, investigate the things that you know and have heard can really help, because they can. I will no longer beat the drum that and pretend that treatments don't exist. Treatments exist first and foremost, and preventative measures exist as well. People who have nutrient deficiency, excuse me, nutrient availability in their bloodstream, this is not an issue and there's nothing to be worried about. We've seen this over and over and over again clinically. We've seen people recover in under a week with just nutrient therapy, hundreds of people. This is not an issue. Okay, number one. Number two, when you get into the inner workings of how things are going, and clearly this is not scientific what the CDC is doing, clearly it's not even legal what they're doing. What you can do is you can go to a place like Stand for Health Freedom, and you can go and fill out any of the 15-second petitions they have there that send emails directly to people that want to help. They need numerical support. They need your support. Stand for Health Freedom. Go there. Then what you do is you donate. You donate to Dr. Jack, and you keep a show like this running so that we can keep it going. You donate to his great project on next gen PCR testing with Dr. Lee. You put your money where your mouth. They say every dollar spent is a vote cast. Well, you get to cast your vote every time you donate to people who are doing the right things. We are all working out of the goodness of our hearts on this. I have spent tens of thousands of dollars to participate in what is the greatest event of our lifetimes. I have no doubt about it. You know, I've spent thousands of dollars to be here. I'm not here trying to break the bank and become a millionaire off of somebody's donation. I'm simply here doing what's right. And if you love what we are doing, then and you feel like we're onto something, which we are, then give us a dollar. Send us $5, send us $20, and say, look, I believe in what you guys are doing. Carry what we all want, what's in the best interest of all of us and our children especially, forward with your generosity. That's all we're asking you to do. There's so much you can do for this.
That's very kind of you to do that, Dr. Ealy. What I also want to say is people need to get up in the face of their congressmen and their senators,
Hmm.
and they want to say, oh, you got to FOIA your public health departments at the state and county level for all
Hmm.
communications about PCR testing between
Mm-hmm.
them and the CDC. We need you to FOIA your public health, state health department for communications about COVID-19 PCR testing, specifically about the accuracy of COVID-19 testing. Just ask for that and see what they give you, because they're denying information on the thresholds on the basis of that it's proprietary, which is a bunch of hokey crap. All
Mm-hmm.
those thresholds are talked about in the scientific literature. They're not proprietary. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so you are the answer to this. Dr. Ealy and I can only do so much. Everybody working on this problem, Dr. Lee, Dolores Cahill, everybody, Kevin Jenkins, can only do so much to make testing real in the United States. Please
Mm-hmm.
understand that when you talk to your senators and you talk with them, educate them, share this video with them. It's really important that they see that what's going on. We've laid it out in as plain and simple terms as we possibly can. There is fraud at the CDC right now.
Mm-hmm.
Fraud.
Substantial.
That needs to be addressed through the Senate hearings. And they
Mm-hmm.
need to be dragged up into a hearing to answer for why they're changing. None of this hokey, oh, well, we're not really changing it. We're tracking it over here, but we're not reporting. These are not clinically significant. Well, wait a minute. What about the set 4% death rate that the longitudinal studies are supporting? 4%
Mm-hmm.
death rate. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so bring it home to them. Let them know that we're deadly serious about this. And I mean deadly. I mean that there are lives and people that are tested positive and they're told to go home and get sick to see if you need emergency care. That is the crime, the medical crime of the century. That
Mm-hmm.
explains the death rates. The
Mm-hmm.
diagnosis itself is really important. I'm obviously a wonk about that. Dr. Ealy's a super huge wonk on diagnosis, getting it right. He's got this peer-reviewed paper, this analysis of his team, and he's got other peer-reviewed works that they've done that show that the CDC initially used PCR to overdiagnose due to false positives. Well, guess what? Along with the false positives are false negatives, and the CDC is not doing the right kind of science. So we're here to do that science on your behalf. Check out the NATAC Consortium. Go to ipaknowledge.org and check out the NATAC Consortium. And specifically, we're looking for an angel. We're looking for somebody who wants to give a large amount of money so that our consortium can start sequencing clinical samples, not only for COVID-19, the SARS-CoV-2 virus, but also for influenza A, influenza B, respiratory syncytial virus, bacterial pneumonia. IRB approved. We're not going forward with this until we get the IRB letter, okay? So that we can show the world how to do differential diagnosis through standard Sanger sequencing to determine what's making people sick, what's giving them the symptoms, and further evaluate with Dr. Singhang Li the specific accuracy, sensitivity, and specificity of the use of PCR for COVID-19. This is not an academic exercise. There's nothing
Can I can I
academic about this at
can
all.
I sum this one up, Dr. Jack,
You
for
bet.
everybody listening?
Yeah,
It's like this, folks. We don't have to guess. We have the technology, so we never have to guess again
exactly
whether
right.
it's COVID-19 or what kind of flu or RSV. Dr. Lee, Dr. Jack, these are some of the smartest people in the entire country, let alone world. And they are saying we don't ever have to go through this again. All we have to do
Ever.
is get the test right. And this never has to happen again. And all they're asking for is your support on doing it. And I think we can find that in our hearts, can't we?
We can. I was in the Department of Pathology at the University of Pittsburgh, and I spent my time helping clinicians make their biomarker tests better by not by tweaking the technology, but by doing better science. So if
Mm-hmm.
there's one contribution that I make to the human endeavor that we call science, and that's to hand the world a differential diagnostic test kit that I have no financial interest in. I swore off on any financial interest, didn't I? I said, I'm with
Mm-hmm.
IPAC. I don't want to know how, if, when, anything about commercialization. I'm out of it. I don't want to know. But if I could do the science that brings forward the knowledge that we can actually, instead of getting these bucket diagnostic categories like influenza disease, that includes
Mm-hmm.
influenza, respiratory syncytial virus, influenza A and
Mm-hmm.
B, and you think you have influenza when it had nothing to do with influenza, or
Mm-hmm.
worse, much worse, I have these symptoms, I test positive for COVID-19, go home, get sick for 10 days. I had bacterial pneumonia. My lungs fill up. No treatment. No concept that I would need treatment. Just go home
Right.
and see. We cannot tolerate this kind of medicine in the United States. It's destroying our civilization. Dr.
Yep.
Fauci needs to be fired. He needs to resign. He needs to stop talking. He should go into the shadows of history in shame for his
Hmm.
version of medicine. I'm a PhD. He's an MD. I can think circles around that man. I don't ever want to see him on my television set ever again. He needs to go away. And Dr. Collins needs to resign too, because he sat there the whole time like a bump on a log, knowing that people were being diagnosed with COVID-19 when they probably had influenza, when they just changed the label on the bucket. So the NIAID, we're not even, forget about who funded the research on gain of function in Wuhan. Forget about that. That's enough. Okay. But look at this now. Lying to your face, tolerating fraud. Fauci should be knocking down the door, right, of the Senate saying CDC's up to some funky shit over there. That's what Fauci should be doing. Instead, he's I don't know. Who knows? We can't know. Yeah, we can know. Sequence the heck out of every patient with
Yep.
standard sequencing. Standard sequencing, it's cheap. It's going to prove to be effective. And that's what the NATech Consortium's about. We've been at this for months. We're months and months of planning to do the NATech Consortium. We're ready to go. Dr. Lee's lab is CLIA approved for clinical sequencing for COVID-19 diagnosis. Positive samples, negative samples, whatever it is, he could do legally clinical diagnosis right now. And we're waiting for your support. We have been doing this for so long, waiting for real support. So check out ipa-knowledge.org. Check out the NATech Consortium. And my brother, Dr. Ealy, I want to thank you so much for bringing the truth forward. I appreciate it so much.
Hey, man, I always appreciate being here. And I would say anybody who's already donated, thank you very much for your generous donations. And if you could send more and ask somebody else to give a hand, that would really be helpful. I love this idea of this dream we have, Dr. Jack. I love this idea of a sample comes into a hospital or a lab. And that sample, we really have no idea what it is. But because of the work that you and Dr. Lee have done, you can take that, put it in, and know exactly what the genetic sequence of that is. And we can get the most accurate, definitive diagnosis quickly. So then we open up, once we get that definitive diagnosis, it opens up the pharmacopoeia. How do you want to treat this? We know exactly what we're treating, and we know what we need to do to kill it, to get people back on with their lives. There's no more guesswork. That's what's in front of us right now. That's the opportunity that's in front of us right now, is no more guesswork when it comes to infectious disease. No more ability of the CDC to play a sleight of hand illusionary game with data
That's
and
it.
rules, all that stuff. It all goes bye-bye because we stopped guessing when we could know.
I love that. That is such a clear way to explain it. Thank you. So here's the NATech Consortium webpage itself. All right, it was founded January 1st, 2021. We've been at it for a while. We've talked about it well before then. Go check it out. It's got all the consortium members' names, faces, affiliations. We're out here in the open telling you that we have a way to change differential diagnosis of respiratory illness in the United States and the world forever.
Ever.
Forever. So that they can never pull the wool over your eyes again. In fact, the CDC is now moving towards sequencing, so they're following our lead. Now you think about that.
Don't let them get there first, though. I'll tell you that.
They don't know
Don't
how to.
let 'em-
But they don't know how to get there, because if they start sequencing, then they're going to find out these negative patients actually had it and these positive patients actually didn't. Oh boy, then we're in for it, right?
Wait, Dr. Jack, are you mean we get to correct the count? Or
Yeah.
is that what we get to do? My God, we get to adjust all of the death certificates that shouldn't have been related to COVID and get them out of there. And we get to get the case counts accurate, and we get to get the hospitalizations accurate. And then what do you think we're going to see? I think we're going to see that these numbers are grossly inflated. What do you think?
Mostly inflated is a good way to put it. Somewhere between 11% if you're conservative to 60%, or maybe as high as 90% at the extreme. 60% of cases are probably false positive, folks. That's what the Marine study showed over and over and over again. We're ready to go. We are ready to go. So please take a good look at this. This is a really important endeavor. And by the way, if you have missed out on Breaking Science because I haven't been doing them, that's because I'm in the middle of a move. There's nothing to do with any of the rumors that you may have heard, right? About me being sidelined or anything like that. There is some news that's coming. I'm not going to reveal it today, but there is some news that shows you that we are in a battle for science. It proves it, absolutely proves it. I'm going to review that with Dr. Paul Thomas next week when we talk
Awesome.
about the IPAC vax versus unvax and give you a status update on that study.
Yeah,
All right.
I love that guy, Dr. Jack. He's such a good dude, man. I love
Oh
that's
man, he's
definitely
great.
one we can't miss.
Right on. Well, listen, you guys take it easy out there and enjoy the sunshine. Okay, enjoy the sunshine no matter where you are. Give each other big hugs, big kisses. Give us a big kiss on the way out, Dr. Ealy. Give everybody a big kiss. You
Mm.
know it.
Well, look, can I give the blessing? Can I give the blessing that
You
I
sure
like to do
can.
for
You sure
everybody? All
can.
right. Because I'd like to keep science and our spirituality separate, but I believe in blessings. I believe in the energy of them and that they rebound in a good way on us. So folks, may your creator, by whatever name you have, shine his or her divine light down upon you, everyone that you love, and surround you in the protection of his or her warm embrace. Aloha, adios, and one love, everybody.
Amen
Peace.
and a women.
Amen.
Amen and a women. All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Ealy. It's been great. We're going to now take it easy.
Thanks, thanks, brother Jack.